Hello and welcome back to the OnlyAccies podcast. On today's episode, Brandon and I are joined once again by Ewan Summers to discuss a variety of topics from another disappointing result in Aberdeen. We'll also be looking at what Brian Rice and Allan Maitland had to say in the press, none of it very satisfying. We'll also be looking ahead to a game that could or could not be postponed at Midden, and of course we'll get a few fan questions at the end as well. Gentlemen, how are we this evening?
Yeah, all right. Suppose. How are you, Ben?
Thank you. It's the first time anyone's ever asked me. Thank you, and I'm very well, thank you. We'll start, of course, another disappointing game, Tuesday night, away to Aberdeen. Not one we expected to get anything from, let's be honest, but it was worse than what we could have expected, probably. Brandon, we got your thoughts after St Johnstone. Was this pretty much a carbon copy of that?
Obviously, I wasn't as bad as I was after St Johnstone because it's a game we should have really expected to be getting at least a point from against St Johnstone. Going up to Pittodrie, we don't really expect to get anything. With the current ongoing situations that's been happening as well, the manner in which we started, I had a bet on. I had a bet on Accies to score. A goal before the first half an hour, which was pretty much a certainty to happen. I'm also disappointed in just the manner in which we get beat, which is just following on for poor starts.
What do you think that is? Do you think that's mentally not prepared for starting? Do you think we're not fit enough? Or do you think teams are just know that we start slowly and pounce on that?
It really is bizarre. Obviously, none of us actually know what it is. We're not very good at defending, so that's obviously a part of it. You're going to concede, but the fact is, pretty much every week that you're conceding within the first 20 minutes, it suggests that there's a deeper problem. I wonder if it is psychological or whether it's the fact that it's been spoken about a lot, the real dearth of leaders in the team. Is it the fact that as soon as we concede, because it's more a recent problem that we concede so many goals within the first half, but I wonder whether the Aberdeen St Johnstone game is just as soon as we concede the first goal, they freeze and are absolutely terrified and make wrong decisions and whatnot. So if Brian Rice says he doesn't know what's happening, and we're not going to know, but it's such a bizarre problem that's so costly.
Yeah,
I would like to know the conversion rate against us, as in like shots to goal conversion rate, because it seems pretty much just any attack teams are having it's a real high chance of them scoring. And I know Brian Rice came in his press conference today, and says any mistake we're making, teams are punishing us for the mistakes, which he is really correct in saying. It just seems to me if a team scores one early on, they're not resting for that just 1-0 lead.
Yeah.
You do find in a lot of games that if a team goes one up, that'll be them. They'll just sort of ease the game out a bit and then go for a second eventually. When teams are playing us just now, even with Annan, they're scoring that first and they're just going for the second. So they're obviously trying to capitalise on that, and they are. So it's just, like Ewan says, if Brian Rice doesn't know what the issue is, then we're certainly not going to know what the issue is. But I think there definitely will be a sort of psychological reason behind it as well.
And I don't think the defence are getting much help from the midfield either. One of the main notes I made from Aberdeen was how atrocious that midfield is. And there's not one player, and I mean this with all due respect, there's not one player in that midfield who I think is a Premiership midfielder. They're Championship. As much as I love Scott Martin, he's a Championship midfielder. I think Collar been caught out of position so many times. Obviously, he made the mistake which led to the Ryan Edmondson, I believe, second goal. And Martin and Callaghan had run a bit like headless chickens. It seems like our midfield is probably the biggest area which could be improved, both defensive midfield and creative midfield. And obviously Ronan Hughes was brought in as a David Templeton replacement. Didn't do much. What do you think is wrong with our midfield? Can it be salvaged with the players we currently have?
Well, I've made the mistake of picking up Will Collar pretty much all through 2020, so I think I might need to reevaluate that. I thought in the first, how long was it out for? Month and a half. I thought he was going to not solve our issues, but I thought he was going to go a long way to at least papering over a few more cracks. He isn't quite as headless as you put it as Callahan and Martin, but he just seems to be all over the shop at the moment. One thing that I think he can do a wee bit better than them is he can retain possession a wee bit better, and he doesn't tend to leave as many gaps in behind as those two do. But other than that, it just feels like Mimno's got to go, Trafford's got to go, Sterling's got to go. Is there anyone else left to come in and try and be the guy to solve these midfield issues, or is it just a case of the structure has got to be a lot better?
I suppose that is another question. Is it the players or is it the structure they're playing under?
The structure's not exactly definite. It's not helping them at all. But when you go back in previous seasons, we've always sort of had that player in midfield that's going to give you that sort of dig and is going to sort of cut up the play as such. Obviously, last season it was Gogic. Mm-hmm. Season before that, you could probably say Daz sort of dug up the play and stopped the play. And with the structure they're playing just now, you need that type of player, because we're seeing in every game, it's that gap between the midfield and defence, which is just completely non-existent. And that's how teams are getting so much space and so much time to attack us. And like I touched on earlier, it seems like pretty much every attack is coming to a goal just now. So we've not got MD in that slot that's going to cut up the play. So the structure in which they're playing just now with the two up top, and it's clearly not working. If they're going to go with the sort of concept of we'll just score as much goals as we can, that's all very well and good, but you need to score more than the other team, and we're always conceding more just now. So I don't know what we need to do. Something needs to be done. I personally don't know what needs to be done. So,
and going forward, say we're scoring plenty of goals, and we are. I still don't think, though, in my opinion, that Moyo and Augie partnership is working. And as much as it looked fairly decent at the end of last season, it's not started strong at all. And I wanted to ask, do you think this is the opportunity to take them out of the team, bench them both, and bring in basically a whole new front line, say like Tunde, Callum Smith, Johnson, etc.? Do you think this is the time to drop the two guys who, I don't want to say the bigger names, but drop the two maybe more recognisable and start maybe some of the ones who deserve more of a chance? Just mix it up.
What I don't understand sometimes is, for instance, when we're going 4-0 down against Aberdeen, game's dead and buried. See if you're not thinking these sort of players are up to scratch yet, or they're not as fit, let's say. Why not just chuck them on?
Yeah.
We've nothing to lose at that point. Just put them on. See what they're made of when the game's dead and buried. If they've not got the confidence in them to play a full 90 minutes or start a match, then if the game's dead and buried, just put them on. It can't be any worse than what's already happening. With what's going on just now, we all gain Moyo. I think you're correct in saying try something new. We might be scoring goals, but it's certainly not coming through the strikers. Moyo scored. They've scored a couple of goals between them, but it's not exactly finishes that any other player wouldn't score.
Yeah.
I think we need to try a different sort of structure and dimension of our play. So, I'd definitely change it up a wee bit.
I've loved Augie the whole time he's here, even though I've aware of his limitations. I just find him so much fun to watch. But this season, he's not even had that. I actually think Moyle's probably been better than him this season. I think he's actually quite underrated when you play it into his feet. He's probably better at that and linking up than Augie is, which is good when you've got Tempson behind him. But as we'll touch on later, we've not got that now. So right now I'm beginning to wonder whether we just completely, if you're going to stick with those two, I think you probably have to stick with both of them. I don't think it is one or the other, because they both need someone alongside them. The Tunde one's weird, like really weird. He's obviously, it took Miller a few months to settle in as well, but I thought Tunde did okay against Dundee United. Ben, you saw the Annan game. How did he do in that?
This is the thing about. I was excited to see him start because I thought if he's going to get a real good chance to get his MD, it's going to be League Two Annan. But because we barely had the ball and because we barely created any chances, he didn't get a chance. He had more opportunity against Dundee United than he did against Annan.
Because again, I don't think Smith's a striker. I think he probably does look best. Probably does look best as a winger. And I think just the way we play, firing balls either up to a striker's head or from deep into their feet. I think right now Moyle, I'd probably be happy sticking with him as uninspiring as that is. I suppose he got a goal, didn't he? But that's not really. We've seen before how often does he actually kick on from these goals. But yeah, I'd probably just. I'm that scunnered at the moment that I'm just thinking, just stick with them and see what happens.
Yeah, I think we're all scunnered now, man. It's just the whole kind of atmosphere is so low at the club right now. There's no optimism. I mean, you see the most die-hard Accies fans I could ever think of who are saying that they can't be bothered watching the club right now. That to me says it all, in my opinion.
Touching back onto the sort of striker options. I think the thing about Augie this season is I think opposition teams have learnt that Augie's good because his first touch is that bad, that it gets him away from defenders. So they're not as tight to him as what they used to be. So I think that's one thing that I've noticed in Augie's sort of first year and a half, that his touch was really bad, but it done him favours more often than not. So that's a point you could make in the Augie situation. I just think we need to change up the structure. We're conceding too much. We might be, the past couple of games we've scored goals, which is completely different to the rest of how the season's been. I don't understand it at all, because you go back with Brian Rice's teams when he was with John Hughes, the type of football, even if it was a Falkirk or an Inverness, the type of football they used to play was really good stuff to watch, and it was really nice. And you'd think with Brian Rice being under John Hughes' wing and being his right-hand man for so long, some of that type of football would be implemented into his game. So that's what just mind-boggling to me. It's just continued if you can, but that could a lot say more about Boozy as well, but that's a completely different topic.
I do want to get just a few reaction tweets in from the Aberdeen game. So George Gardner online said, "No excuses to this, except that this manager isn't capable of keeping this team up. Rice must go. Don't wait for the inevitable as you did with Canning." Callum Wishart says, "Rice has already shown with his recent ridiculous, scandalous comments that he doesn't respect the fans and the club enough to walk, despite the fact we stuck by him when he needed it. He isn't a manager, and if he isn't sacked, we're 100% going down." You can see the kind of theme for these. Ross Alexander says, "To think we scored 2 in the last 3 and we still don't come away with any points. Can you think that this is acceptable? Do the honourable thing and walk away as you have lost the dressing room and the fans." Now, I kept that in because I saw a comment, and I'd like to get your opinion on it, from the Twitter account Red and White, that said, "Rice has not lost the dressing room. He has them playing exactly as he wants, which is too open and leaves us for the taking, but that is his philosophy. Don't let him off the hook or suggest the players could make his opinions work." So what he's saying is he hasn't lost the dressing room, but this is how he wants to play, as open and expansive, and teams are taking advantage of that. I want to know your opinions on that.
I don't think we are playing open and expansive, to be honest with you. I think that's just something that's carried over from his first half season in charge where we were. But over the summer of 2019, we just reverted back to type. I just think that it's just they just are not organised whatsoever. It's not a matter of them being open and expansive, because they're not. We saw last season how few chances they created. It's just the fact that they aren't set up properly, really. And I don't think it is a case of Rice implementing a certain philosophy that's backfiring. You could have said that in his first few months in charge, but not now.
We've had a fair few Brian Rice press conferences in the last few weeks, which have raised eyebrows, caused a bit of confusion. And he said another one. He said after the Aberdeen game that we started to climb the mountain, and I must say the second half was the best we've played this season. I don't see where he's getting that from. The reason that we seemed to come into the game, if at all, was because Aberdeen had went to sleep and thought game's done and dusted, which it was. Brandon, what do you make of Brian Rice saying that was the best we'd played all season?
It's very silly. He's not very good with the media.
No.
I have to say. I think one thing we've missed, talking about that comment, it certainly isn't the best we've played all season. Not that we've played great football all season, because we certainly haven't. I'd probably say our best period of play would be the Livingston game. You could argue, or possibly the second half of St Mirren, even though we get beat. I'd probably go with that. Actually, St Mirren's second half, despite getting beat. There's not a big amount of choice from that. I suppose he's only saying that because as Bobby Bollocks says, we won the second half. We've got a lot to take into the next match because we've won the second half. What a horrible mentality. But his press conferences are mental. I think one we missed out in there was the one before the Aberdeen game where he's actually had a go at Andy McGilvery. His manner and his tone was, I just couldn't believe it. He's like, that's a local newspaper asking that question. A local newspaper. And you're like, he's just not helping himself at all.
Especially not somebody like Andy who
Exactly.
on Accies for God knows how long. And
it's because they're part of Lanarkshire Live now. They just don't really accept the sort of, because the advertiser used to answer their questions how they used to normally. You never really saw anything in the advertiser that would go out of line. Now they've went to Lanarkshire Live. Quite rightly so, they are asking genuine questions. They're not just asking by the book questions. But like that is another topic on its own. Obviously, I'll put it to Ewan. What do you think about his comments about the best performance of the season?
Well, I watched that St Mirren game earlier today and was actually surprised. I thought at the time we did quite well, but I was actually surprised that as an attacking performance, it was our best of the season. Certainly not the second half against Aberdeen when we're 4-1 down. When he came in, and I'm not sure if it's been covered on this end before, but when he came in, he handled the fans really, really well. I thought, maybe not the media and how he handled the media, but in terms of saying he was the anti-cannon in every single thing he said. But last season, I don't think we really saw any of this sort of weirdness creeping in. But this season it's more than the performances. I thought he was gone during the Aberdeen game. I didn't think he would see the St Mirren game. More than anything, because of how he's been in the media, he just seems completely fed up and lost, and it seems like it's almost getting a bit too much for him. But
we know that
he's digging his heels in, isn't he?
We know Aki's hate bad PR, and all he's done recently is bring bad PR. So you would think that would be. I agree with you, and I thought he was gone. Aberdeen
From what I've heard, Accies have says the sort of hierarchy have says they don't think anything that he's done is wrong.
Yeah, well, that's kind of mentioned in that kind of leads us quite nicely into what Allan Maitland said, which was yesterday, I believe, which he spoke about backing. He basically backed the manager and said to fans that, don't worry about it. He's not going anywhere. And we were all like, well, that's not exactly what we like to hear. I will read you for anybody who hasn't read it. I'm assuming most of you have, but I will read a little snippet out just so you can get a feel for what he said. He said, we've suffered more than most in terms of our squad being hit by injuries and COVID incidents. The thing with the squad is working hard as they possibly can, and I've got no desire to make any changes in our management team. And I would say that as a club, as a management team, and as a board of directors, we are doing everything we can to make it better, and I have total confidence we will turn the results around. He said, if MD is asking me if our manager or management team is under threat, the answer to that is absolutely no. Which, listen, I don't blame him for coming out and backing the manager. I get it. That's what chairmen do. They're at the club. They don't want to come out and say, we don't actually believe in this guy, and that obviously causes more issues. But the reaction that was said online with a lot of people saying that's the first nail in the coffin is always the board and the club coming out and backing their manager. I can just say personally, I'm really disappointed when I read it. Allan Maitland's always been very good with us. He's been on the podcast. He's came on. He was very honest with us. He spoke to me and David. Off the podcast and all that. It's always seemed very nice, but he just seemed to be totally off the mark with that statement in terms of understanding where the fans are coming from. Because he said also in that we don't understand. He said the fans don't understand where we're at with the budgets, where we're at with COVID, and where we're at with. The fans do understand. Like, we understand budgets are being cut. We understand COVID issues are a problem. We've dealt with that. We understand injuries are going to be an issue. It seemed patronising for me to say that fans don't understand. But we also don't understand because nobody tells us. We get nothing from the club. How are we meant to know what the issues are if we don't get told them? They can't just expect us to know these things.
That's what Mackie's TV's for. You should know that.
I should pay the $42.99 a year and get it. That's why I thought at the start of the season we would get a statement basically saying, "Listen, we're in shit here. We have no money. We're just going to have to deal with this." But we don't get that. To me, that was patronising to the fans, in my opinion, and I'm very disappointed in what
I don't have a problem when this sort of situation's going on and fans are on the back of a manager or fans on the back of anything, for a chairman to come out and just declare like he's safe pretty much. I don't have an issue with that. Yeah. It's the manner in which he's came out and done it, in the wording. But it's as if they're blaming the fans for not being able to play a competitive team. It's the fans' fault that COVID's happening and we don't understand all the ins and outs. It's just no fair for him to come out and blame the fans because the fans are reacting to situations. Mm-hmm. I know they don't like bad press, and majority of the bad press and bad sort of attention's coming from the fans' reactions on social media, which they'll be hating. But there must be something in them that realises that the fans aren't just saying this for no reason at all. Yeah. The fans are reacting for genuine reasons. Brian Rice, his press conference after, the fans reacted in a well-due manner, in my opinion. After St Johnstone, the fans have reacted in an alright manner to what's happened, and then after Aberdeen, we've reacted in an alright manner. So Wise came out and said that, I really don't know, and I think it's just creating a much bigger divide amongst the fans, and it's not something, especially in these sort of times, you want to be creating an even bigger divide.
Yeah. I do want to read one of the reaction tweets from an Accies fan. It was over under the We Are Hamilton Twitter page, and it said, Maitland really must think we're stupid. He had the opportunity before the season started to explain why we're the only club facing COVID-19 injuries and general poverty, so we could have expected no more than what we've got to date. He didn't, and now for some reason it's the fans' fault. We are it's as if we are unreasonably demanding Rice gives even a hint that he can give up on us. We've long known they don't give two fecks about us, but it's the emperor's new clothes with Rice, and they back him despite the evidence being clear. Siege mentality against the few of us who still care. And he said that, he hit the nail on the head there. That to me, it sums it up perfectly. They had the opportunity to explain to us, they didn't, and now we're getting the blame for not understanding. Ewan, what did you make of Allan Maitland's comments in the press?
I think it's all been summed up really, really well, that creating, let's be honest, it's a chasm right now between the fans and the club as a whole, really. Creating that, I just didn't really understand what he's trying to prove by that comment. Obviously, come out and back your manager. That's fair enough. I don't necessarily agree that what he says about Rice, but it's completely understandable. But having to go at fans alongside that is just suicide. Yeah. How do he or Brian Rice expect to get fans back on board, especially at a club like us who are never going to finish above 10th and have a moderately satisfying season? The only way they could pull it around is get relegated and get promoted, because they're just sort of running their name into the ground. And I think around, going back again to the summer 2019, there was a really good feeling about Maitland and Rice, because they seemed less confrontational and antagonistic than as much as they've done for the club, Gray and McDonald and Martin Cannon as well. So it's really frustrating to think that we are back like the end of 2018 again. What's happened?
Yeah, I mean, the first ever video on this channel was me doing a transfer roundup, and what I said in that video was, it's a real good to see a change of pace. We're doing deal. Don't get me wrong, I spoke up like Marcus Fjortoft and that, so I didn't know much, but I said in it, it's quite good to see them doing business early on in the window, getting it done, and not, transfer deadline scraping the bottom of the barrel. And I do agree, the kind of feeling behind Rice and Maitland was they're at least kind of more positive, moving in the right direction. But to me, this is all going downhill.
Like, I think it's Ewan hit it in the nail there by saying it's going back to the sort of end of 2018. And I think that was sort of clarified with something you could compare to the beginning of 2019, at St Johnstone away, where Martin Cannon's dad had a sort of rammy with a bunch of fans, which we saw after the Aberdeen game, with supposedly Brian Rice's partner, Fiona, having a go at fans, calling them cunts, and pretty much just replying to anybody's tweet that was negative against Brian, which has all subsequently been deleted. What was your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I understand that it must be really, really difficult for family members who of managers and players and whatnot, and understand that it can be easy to contain yourself, but it just exacerbates this problem that we keep speaking about, of the relationship between fans and board members and the club and manager and whatnot. That just it's just not going to help. It's going to make it turns folk against Brian Rice as well. But I don't know what he can do about it, other than if it is his partner say to her, "Don't go on Twitter" or whatever. There's not a good situation.
No. One of the best things you can do as football is learn to bite your tongue. When something you don't like something happens, you have to know a time and place to say it. And I think Brian Rice hasn't done that recently with some of his comments. I think he needs to learn to bite his tongue and take it on the chin. And it was the same with that Twitter account. You need to learn to bite your tongue in football. And I get she was just defending her partner and not wanting to see any negative things about him online, but you can't do that. like you cannot do that. And like Ewan said, I don't know how much Brian Rice can actually do about it, but it does affect him because now we're all saying Brian Rice's partner is causing more anger and distaste between the fans. So it was a weird thing to see online. It was a really, really weird thing to see. Like Brandon said. I was going to say, like Brandon said, it's Canning's dad 2.0. I don't know why the club. I don't know why we have this bad luck. Family members.
I was just wondering whether Maitland and Rice, going back a wee bit, whether they would be saying these things if fans were allowed in the ground. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Absolutely not. I think because it sounds silly to say, but because there's so few of us, it's easier for us to direct our voice towards one person or multiple people. So we know where the chairman and that sit. We all know it, right in the middle. We obviously know where Brian Rice is going to be. If the fans were in, there's no way they would be calling it the fans in this way because they know that we're there and we can voice it directly to them. So I don't think so.
But saying that, they know that we can, Accies fans, there might not be a lot of us, but we can cause a storm in the media, which we've proved several times. Just ask
that pub in Dundee.
That's what I was about to say. Just ask that pub owner in Dundee. Nearly got him closed down selling steak pies to vegetarians.
That was the best comment I'd seen. I'm vegan.
It was that one and the one where the one where somebody says they say it's a family friendly pub. I took them in and there was strippers in the pub. And you could tell they were from Dundee because this stripper had no more than 3 teeth. It'd be good if we'd done something like that again, just to cheer ourselves up. I don't know how we could do it, but another example of that is when we says we were going to boycott the games to go to Selkirk, and that managed to get us a signing. So I understand what you're saying. We obviously, if we weren't at the game, we could obviously cause a bit of storm there. But because of the current situation and there are no fans being there, all our sort of comments is getting put onto social media. So it's a bit. You can't really answer it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a weird one, and I hate to pile on more bad news, but we got the information today that David Templeton is going to be out for at least 3 months with a groin injury. Along with that, Kyle Monroe is also going to be out with a fractured wrist. We've spoke how important David Templeton is going to be on this channel so many times this season. The question I'd like to ask you guys is, what do we do? Do you persist with, say, Ronan Hughes in that role? Or another thing that was brought up was the possibility of Tony Andrew coming back on a free transfer. What are your opinions on missing David Templeton?
I think we spoke about it several times. The fact that we've never really had a plan B when Temps isn't there or he goes off. I was looking at stats. Templeton's the third most filled player in the league. The other two are centre mids, which is understandable because the two other players are ones that commit a lot of fouls. So it's I think it was just an accident waiting to happen. I think we made the mistake by not having a replacement or a sort of go-to option if this did happen. I think it was inevitable that something like this would happen and we wouldn't have him for a long period of time. I think he'll be out for the rest of the season now. Where's Lewis Smith? Do we know about him?
No.
Well, the last I messaged Lewis Smith actually to ask this. He said he was aiming to be back for St Johnstone.
Nice
But
Aki tells us.
yeah, that's come and gone. So who knows?
They always mention about Easton. I know I'm going a bit off topic. I'll come back to it, but they always mention about Easton being coming back fit and stuff like that, and give us an update on Easton. Why have they not been giving us an update on Lewis Smith and what's going on with him? I'm very bemused by that. I just don't understand
Especially
why.
poster boy of
Poster boy, exactly. So is there maybe a more underlying issue there? You know what I mean? I'm a bit confused by that, but I don't think we can just go with what we've got and hope that they can sort of replace Temp's ability. Because no one in that team will certainly do that. We were struggling before the last couple of games. Obviously, we were struggling creativity-wise. We weren't scoring bar set pieces, which we touched on so much. But recently, obviously, we've scored a lot of goals. But that's usually after teams are already humping us. But I don't think that can really say much about our creativity levels. I'd 100% take Tony Andrew. I know he's certainly not been anywhere near what he was the first time he was around, but the options we've currently got, he's a much better option than. I'm not necessarily saying just go and get Tony Andrew. I'd prefer them to look into the free agent market and get players. There's hundreds of players that would bite your hand off to be playing football just now, and for some sort of income. There'll be so many that because of COVID have not got a club just now. So I would think they'd be extremely stupid not to divulge into the free agent market. I think Brian Rice slightly touched on it in his press conference today, that he'll be asking the question. I think he had to say that though, to sort of soothe the fans a bit. I think that press conference there was actually his best one recently. Not that's really bigging him up. He was just talking normal compared to his last one. But that was a very long-winded answer. Yes, we need to sign somebody.
Yes, Ewan, how big of a loss do you think David Templeton's going to be in? And do you agree with Brandon? How should we deal with this issue?
I mean, he is the biggest loss, isn't he? If you asked any Aki fan, one person you don't want to get injured is him. See, when you consider the amount of absolute rubbish that we have had in the squad, it's ridiculous that we have a player that good who was willing to come back to us as well. There's no one even close to him in the squad. I was thinking about what he's good at more than anything. It's close control, he's dribbling. I think who'd be as good as him in the current squad that could come in and replace him? Winter or Smith, maybe, but then they don't have anywhere near his vision or just his technique, his shooting ability, or anything. If you play Ronan Hughes in there, it's a completely different system you're going to. You have to go along to the two strikers and hope that he wins their knockdowns, as he did a couple of times, certainly for his second goal against St Johnstone. But yeah, there's almost no other way around it than to get someone in. Well, last season, really only he was either injured or out of form for a wee bit last season when he came in, and we just went to Moyle and Augie went direct to them. But that was when Augie was doing absolutely brilliantly and Moyle was doing quite well. I don't really see what our alternative is right now other than to get someone else in.
Would you bring Tony Andrew back? Would you be a fan of that?
I think it was either last week or the week before we spoke about Tony Andrew on here, and I said I would take him back, but that was before Temps was injured for 3 months. I don't think we can rely on him for 3 months, probably more than we could for the person who the internal replacement, but I'm not sure whether I'd rather we cast our net a bit wider. When he was last with us and we knew we were going, we signed Miller in the January, and to replace Temps in the next season, and it was a really smart move by Accies because they very rarely do that, having the next in line to come in to be already in the club. But so I'd hope that they have an eye on who'd be his long-term replacement, but I would be shocked if they were available.
Yeah. I do want to read Brandon touched on it, what Brian Rice had to say in his press conference. I do just want to read that quote so everybody knows it. He says, "I'll need to speak to the owners about signings. We spoke about it before the window closed and we know the current financial situation. The biggest thing here is that Hamilton are still going as a football club. It's a conversation I expect to be having, but if it is, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. And we just have to roll up our sleeves and go on with it."
Can I just say, every other team in Scottish, the Scottish top 4 tiers are still going. You know what I mean?
No,
You've got your Ann still going. You've got your Elgin Cities, they're still going. We're a top division side that's been in the top division for 7 years. Why go back to that? Why constantly put the negativity in? Like, you're saying you're maybe going to go for players. Why do you need to say the main thing is Hamilton are still going? As if that's all the ego. You still get your Fitba club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I really hate that mentality, and it's the mentality that stinks within our club. We appreciate everything the board do and how they manage to save us and keep us afloat, and what they've done so far. But it's a very demoralising, demeaning attitude to have, and obviously that's filtered. I think that comment has been a premeditated comment.
Okay.
I think to sort of keep the Accies fans sweet, they'd say say to Brian Rice, listen, say you're going to have possibly look at players, but also then add the point in where we're still afloat. Be grateful as such, which we are grateful, but you don't need to keep reminding us. Every football club is in the exact same position right now. Every football club's affected with COVID. Every football fan's needing to deal with this. So to then put that thought and that comment back in, just to sort of say to Accies fans, you might not get a player to replace Temps because of COVID. It's just a bit stupid in my opinion.
Yeah.
But on the note, like Ewan said with Andrew, I wouldn't necessarily just go specifically for Andrew. I think we need to in-depth look in the free agent market, but it sort of needs to be a quick fix, but it needs to be a fix that's suitable for the remainder of the season, which I think we'll probably see come January. It is a kind of quick fix needed, but because Temps is going to be out for the remainder of the season, they sort of need to broaden their horizons a bit more than just going for a sort of easy option as well. I will probably see more signings come in January with loans, but I don't have a player in mind that we could replace Temps with. I think obviously Tony Andrews is the option in everybody's head because it's the most obvious answer, but there certainly will be people that are better choices and would hopefully a better fit and give us a better chance.
Yeah. And looking ahead to a game that might or might not happen tomorrow afternoon, we're recording this on Thursday night. We were told that St Mirren have got 4 new COVID cases, so this game is very much up in the air. We're looking ahead to it though. Are there any big changes either of you would have to the starting lineup? Can you see any big changes happening? What would you like to see change?
I'm quite curious about how St Mirren will play. Because obviously all the COVID issues and everything, but even the last few games, I had to look and see what formation they were playing and everything. I couldn't really work it all out. It looked like Maurice was occasionally playing wing back and whatnot, so I'm not really sure what to expect. But based on the game in August, and actually a year ago as well, and the defeat in New Douglas Park against them in December, they gave us so many problems just going direct to Habika and Maurice, and I'm really worried about how one and the Dauphin will do up against them, but also, more than anything, our strikers and midfielders will need to work really, really hard to stop that ball, mostly from their midfield over the top and into their feet, because it was causing so many problems in that game in August. It meant that the fullbacks were worried to go forward, which, because of how narrow we often play, it gave us absolutely no width. And due to the midfield issues, it meant that any runner from deep was just getting so much space because of how well those two did at pinning our centre-backs.
Mm-hmm.
So if they go with those two again, I wonder whether we might be worth going to back three, back five, just to... But then, who comes in? Is Easton going to be fit? Do you know if Hamilton and Winter will be back by then?
It says in the article that they're still unavailable. Both
No,
Okay.
no, they're available. They're available.
are they?
It says they're available. Vice came out and says, because I listened to the full press conference.
Mm-hmm.
They're available, but they've not been training in 2 weeks. So
All right.
similar to the Dembele situation before the Old Firm there. He was available, but he hadn't been training for 2 weeks. So was he fit enough? So they are available to play and be in the squad, but whether they'll be fit enough to do it, because being fit enough to possibly train and fit enough to actually play in an actual game is completely different levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we don't know. You can guess Eden with St Mirren just now. We don't know if it's going to be out. I've heard that there's been 15 and 16-year-olds getting tested because they'll possibly need to be in the squad for them. So I've actually I put a bet on Accies to win. Really good odds. The odds have now dramatically went down. And that's the reason I bet Accies, because they're going to have so many players out.
Yeah.
I still think a 16-year-old would cause our team problems at the present moment. Annan caused us problems, so obviously a St Mirren youth player will cause us problems. I still think if the game went ahead, fingers crossed, we would win, but it's a stone in the ocean. You don't know who's going to be available, what St Mirren's going to play. I personally think, regardless of that, you need to change your structure anyway. Just try something different. Stop going with the same shape we're doing just now. I think we just need to sort of change it up a bit. And if we're going with the three at the back, I don't know, man. I really don't know.
Yeah, because it is, like you said, it is all very up in the air. We don't know who's available for St Mirren and who's not. We don't know if they're going to have to play 15 and 16-year-olds. We really don't know much. What I will say, though, is this an opportunity? I say an opportunity. Is this a chance for Brian Rice to try something totally different? Like you said, don't stick with the same shite we've been forced with. This is an opportunity for him to try something new and maybe see if it clicks. Maybe go to the three at the back, or maybe only start one up top, have two wingers instead. Just mix it up completely and try something totally new. That's what I would like to see happen if the game goes ahead.
I wouldn't say it's an opportunity to do it. I would say it's more of almost a necessity to do it. It's not like this is a great chance to experiment. It's more you almost need to, because things just aren't going well. I was wondering whether actually, because he's one decent performance for Accies, whether Justin Johnson might actually get a start in this game.
Apparently there's been a fallout between him and Rice.
Alright, so that's the end of that.
Which all stemmed from Motherwell away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got subbed before half time.
When he got booked off at half time. Apparently there's been quite a big fallout, and it just doesn't see him in his plans. Somebody told me that he'll be out the door by January. So I think what you've said there, Ben, I would go with two wingers.
Yeah, so would I.
One up top. Change it up a bit. That would be my opinion. What would you, lads?
Oh, I don't know, mate.
He doesn't know.
What I would say though, people are saying he fell out with Johnson. He supposedly fell out with Colin at the same time, and he played on Tuesday.
Apparently there was a fallout. Did you hear that?
Yeah, we heard it.
Yeah.
It's not a great sign though, is it? When your manager is falling out with players, and I get emotions get high and people, but like if there's multiple reports of him falling out with multiple players, it's not a great sign.
I
But
know that happens with everyone, but I genuinely didn't actually think he seemed like the type as well. I thought he would be the type of person that would
When
manage
he
to keep
first,
everyone on board.
I don't know if it's just the sort of the Aki's hoodoo, because when he first came in, it was night and day to how he is now. I don't know if just Aki's have changed him into this angry man. I don't know.
yeah, it's a weird one. But let's hope if the game goes ahead, this is an opportunity to get off the bottom of the table. And maybe start something good. Who knows? We'll keep our fingers crossed. We do have a few fan questions just to finish off here. The first one is actually something I was going to include anyway, but after they reposted it, I thought it's the perfect opportunity to ask here. Stephen Donny had a really interesting point. He says that Rice has to go. And Emery, as we all know, would be the natural successor, but would it really make a difference? He says it personally doesn't, and he'd bring in John Hughes to work with Rice and make Emery, Rice and John Hughes and the management team, get rid of Boozy and have George Cairns go back to running the academy. So keeping Rice in the club, but making him an assistant manager as he was previously and bringing in an actual manager to lead the way. What do you guys make of that? Do you think that would make a difference? Do you think that's the right thing to do?
I actually didn't mind the idea of Rice getting demoted almost to be an assistant, because I think he seems to be pretty good at it in his last few clubs. But I just don't understand how that dynamic would work now. Like,
You could probably say like the Ross County managers,
Yeah.
like a co-manager. You could kind of work it that way. But Rice is a head coach just now. In an ideal world, that happening, it's not going to happen though. So there's no point in ourselves getting our hopes up.
I'm absolutely against John Hughes, by the way. I hate the suggestion. I just do not think... I don't know whether he's a good manager anymore, but he's definitely not a right fit for us. He gave up in Inverness after not getting sufficient funds. So, I mean, for a start, how will he do with us? And then
it wouldn't work under our board. No
chance. And he got relegated with Wraith, lost in the playoff to Brecon, who ended up not winning a single game the following season. He was 11 points ahead of St Mirren when he took over and finished level on points with them. I just don't like the suggestion whatsoever.
Yeah, fair enough. Jack Radcliffe asked, does Rice need to change his softly approach with players? I would say yes. I think, it sounds silly to say, but if that was Dougie Emery or something in there, and I hope he does do this. Obviously, we don't know what happens in the dressing room, but I hope he does rip through players at times, because I think that's sometimes what we need. And
but there's no other player that would rip through other players as well. You need to think about it in that way. Let's be serious.
Yeah,
Scott McMahon's our captain. Do you think if we're going in 3-0 down at half time, he's going mental to the 4-0. He's going down mental at the players in the dressing room. Not a chance. In previous years, we've had players like even Aaron McGowan. He probably would. He'd be very vocal in how he felt.
Who did he fall out with? We spoke about it in one of the podcasts. He had a falling out because he came in and ripped through them at half time. He came out and he wasn't captain. He just came out and said what had to be said, and it got him a few bad reviews. Let's say.
He does. What are you saying? Sorry again.
Was that McGowan you were talking about?
Yeah, Adam McGowan. I can't remember I don't remember if it was the Lewis Smith podcast and he told us about it. But he said that Adam McGowan came in and he didn't mince his words, just said what had to be said, and one or two players didn't take kindly to it.
I just think there's nobody in that, and that's where it leads you back to. There's no sort of leadership or sort of vocal people in the park. There's nobody, and obviously, Rice needs to sort of. I think he has got that sort of bad guy attitude. Okay. We just don't see it. When a game's going on, I think there will be a lot of that in training, possibly in the changing room. But it's more than just him. Like I'm touching on, there's nobody in that team that they'll just go into half-time, full-time, we've been beat, that's it. Yeah. Heads down. There's no Emery, there's no Dazzler, there's no trying to think of examples for previous years, even just simple.
Only one I could think of, but he's still quite a young guy.
Who?
Scott Martin's the only other guy I could think of in this current squad, but he's still a young guy.
He's still a young guy, and I think he's sort of angry person, but I don't think he would have the balls to go up against certain people and say how it is, if you know what I mean. It's just knowing that sort of persona.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, other than that, there's genuinely no one that we know of course.
Interesting. It will be, and we'll end it on a question that's been asked a few times, but Neil Graham is persistent. He said, "Is it finally Tommy time? Tommy Wright?" The rumour is he's got in his contract with St Johnstone when he left. It said he wouldn't take another job in Scotland for 12 months. It was linked, of course, with the Northern Ireland job. Tommy Wright, I cannot see him being anywhere near this club.
I just don't know if Accies fans are genuinely thick or they're just deluded.
Talk about making a divide between the fans, man. Jesus.
Make any more divide than it is now. Some of the suggestions are just ludicrous. It's well enough saying bring this person in. It's not going to happen. No. There's no point even debating it. In my opinion, with the current sort of hierarchy and board that are in charge, there's only going to be one certain type of manager in place. It'll either be someone from internally or someone they've dealt with in previous tenures, like Clyde, or they've worked with. So these suggestions of sort of Tommy Wright is just stupid, to say the least.
All right, fair enough. That ends us quite nicely on this podcast. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Thank you all for listening or watching. If you watch on YouTube, you can always listen on Spotify as well. All the links to our social medias are, of course, down in the description. And you can comment your thoughts on the podcast and any of the topics we've discussed today. Be sure to give us your opinions too. Thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you again soon. From yesterday, I feel like I'll never know.